560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The American Bankers Association had a little confab, and before they adjourned for dinner and strippers, they heard from the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, to give the regime's talking point on the banking system.
The steps we took were not focused on aiding specific banks or classes of banks. Our intervention was necessary to protect the broader U.S. banking system. And similar actions could be warranted if smaller institutions suffered deposit runs that pose the risk of contagion. I believe that our actions reduced the risk of further bank failures that would have imposed losses on the Deposit Insurance Fund, which is paid for through fees on banks. Second, we announced a new facility to provide additional liquidity to the banking system. The Fed's new lending facility, the Bank Term Funding Program, is designed to help banks meet the needs of all of their depositors. The situation is stabilizing, and the U.S. banking system remains sound.
U.S. banking system sound, there's a headline, says Yellen. Also embedded there, if you caught it in that scintillating speech she was giving, that smaller banks will get backstopped by the federal government maybe as well. Oh, good. Moral hazards all around.
Hey.
For more on this, Steve Moore, economist and author of GovZilla, joins us. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning, guys. And by the way, when Janet Yellen says that the banking system is sound, it just reminds me a little bit about, those riots in the streets of Chicago were mostly peaceful.
They
right?
were. I mean, what are you talking about?
And that inflation is transitory.
Transitory. What's that?
They let them pull up with U-Hauls and let them take whatever they wanted. It was great. Free stuff for
truth?
everybody. And our city has never been the same.
So what is the state of the banking system in your estimation, Steve?
That's a great question. I think that in my estimation, I don't think there's going to be an all-out, bank failure. I think that you had some banks that made some really bad decisions, and isn't it interesting that one of them is Silicon Valley Bank, which was one of the most woke banks in America. It spent $5 billion on climate change policies. I don't think those investments turned out so well. So overall, I would say that it looks like the worst may be behind us. I do think there may be some more bank failures, but the big four banks, which includes, Citibank and J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo. Those banks have hundreds of billions of dollars of assets, and they're in good shape. What worries me the most about this is two things. One is the moral hazard problem, that every time a company or a bank, a big company or big bank makes a bad business decision, there's Uncle Sam swooping in and giving them a big safety net, which is really just unfair. I mean, it's bad. It's not capitalism. It's not the free enterprise system to bail out every company every time they make a bad decision.
Well, you just heard Yellen expanding the circle. It will be fair because everybody's going to get backstopped by the government. She didn't go quite that far, but
right. And so this is so frustrating because this is called the too big to fail doctrine. And what's happened in America is, every business that has ties with Washington, I guess you're too big to fail if you give big donations to politicians. But Dan, you and me and Amy, we're not too big to fail. And that's why I got to tell you, people are angry about what is going on in Washington. And the idea that, every time somebody is politically well connected, they're going to get money from the government. But the little guy gets crushed by this. I want to go back to one point I made last week, but I have to repeat it. If people are wondering why this is happening, why the banks are under so much financial stress right now, it circles right back to the $6 trillion spending bill spree that was launched by Joe Biden when he came to office with this funny money, dumping $100 bills out of helicopter windows, unleashing inflation, unleashing higher interest rates, and putting banks into a situation of financial stress because they're holding on to these bonds, these government bonds that have been their value has been reduced by 20 or 30%. So we have to get, if they were serious in Washington, if the Biden administration and Janet Yellen were serious about repairing the situation, the first thing they would do is take a chainsaw out of the federal budget. But they're not doing that.
Well, I'm just happy that Silicon Valley depositors like Gavin Newsom and BuzzFeed and Fox Media and Black Lives Matter, I'm just glad they're going to be made whole. That's what's important.
And SD.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm glad that you and I are going to pay, for that.
Yeah.
Because, when they say,
Higher
don't
bank
worry,
fees,
the taxpayers aren't going to pay for this. Of course they are. We're the ones who are going to pay these fees and all of these other things. So, it's just a frustrating situation. We've got to get back to the idea. In fact, I just got a call this morning with some of the, members of Congress just saying, they asked, what do I do? What do we do here? And I said, why don't we just get back to the free enterprise system, where we're not bailout nation. And that would go a long way, by the way, to discipline companies from making these outrageous wrong decisions they've made in terms of their finances.
Well, what about the regulators, the bank regulators who were supposed to watch after SVB and who are obviously asleep at the wheel? Is any
completely
repercussions for them? I mean, they completely did not do their job.
There should be. In a rational world, there should be. But this woman who runs the San Francisco Regional Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank in San Francisco, I forget her name. I think it's Mary Ball or something like
Mary
that.
Daly.
They're talking about putting her on. She could be next in line to be the Federal Reserve Chairman.
Well, I know because
she's getting rewarded. Okay.
Well, she's fighting climate change. She's
that's
fighting
right.
So
It's
that's
all about
what's
climate
happened.
change.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is an important point. So what's happened is everything. These regulators. Isn't it interesting, by the way, that we have this whole pyramid of regulations, but the regulators are always one step behind. They're always one step behind, and so now you've got the situation where they've just become ideological. Biden is hiring people for these positions based not on their knowledge of banking and finance, but whether they believe in climate change and whether they care, whether they want to carry the LGBTQ agenda. That's the qualification now.
Well, right, and I think we have it reversed, though, don't we? I mean, this is classic agency capture. All this talk about we've nationalized the banks, the government owns the banks. Does the government own the banks, or do the banks own the government? Because I think that distinction is important.
Yeah. Well, I will use the word incestuous because that's what we have right now in America today, folks. This incestuous relationship between big business, big banks, and big government. And my worry, about this is that eventually you're going to see the sharks continue to swallow up the minnows. And look, I go back. Do you guys remember the classic movie "It's a Wonderful Life" with Jimmy Stewart and his building and loan? This local bank, these community banks are being swallowed up now by the big banks, and the regulators. That's the other thing. Regulations tend to favor the big guys, not the little guys, because the big, massive banks like J.P. Morgan, they can underwrite the cost of these regulations. The little guys can't.
We don't live in your magical Frank Capra world, Steve. We live in the real world, and we can't allow banks to fail, right? I mean, that's the hey, just one more. We can't. We can't. If Silicon Valley fails, and we let it be. Bought like it's like it, but if we don't backstop, then it will create the contagion run. Why can't a bank fail, even if it's a good sized bank, First Republic or SVB or Signature Bank of New York? And hey, if UBS or Morgan Stanley or Goldman wants to come in and buy them, then you go ahead and buy them. But you work it out in the sector, whatever.
That's so, first of all, what are you? You're a cheerleader for Potter, right? You want Potter to take over.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Hey, you can't pay your bills and here comes Potter. That's how it works.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the free market. It's not capitalism. People on Main Street USA feel like they're getting screwed, and they are here. And, we've got, and it all circles back to a massive out of control government. We have been practicing for the last 3 years now modern monetary theory that the government can just borrow and spend whatever it wants to, and there's no negative repercussions for that because we're the world reserve currency, and it's crashing. It's crashing right before our very eyes. How obvious was this that these dingback theories weren't going to work? So if I sound a little frustrated, I am.
No, don't worry. We're going to stick the landing, whatever the hell that means. Speaking of which, what is the Fed? What's the Fed going to do today? Is it going to be a quarter point? Is it going to be half a point? Is it going to be no points? What's it going to do?
It would be a tough decision if I were. I was nominated to be on the Fed. If I were there, I would be. I could see the arguments both ways. I think they will do a quarter point today, but here's the problem. If they raise rates, which they probably will, and remember, here's the other thing. The rates were 0.5% just 2 years ago. Now they're 4.75% headed to 5%. That's the reason. That's one of the reasons these banks are in so much trouble, is they're holding government bonds that have fallen in value by 25 or 30%. So their balance sheets has been wrecked by these higher interest rates. But on the other hand, we still have 6 to 6.5% inflation. So what do you do with the Fed?
Well,
what they should be doing, Dan and Amy, you know what they should be doing? They should be taking a chainsaw out of the budget and cutting all this excessive government spending. That would be much more effective than the Fed continuing to raise interest rates.
Lisa Abramowitz, who's with Bloomberg, she pointed this on Twitter the other day. This is interesting, too, a little look ahead. She wrote, the question for the Fed isn't whether to hike 25 or 50 basis points this week. It's when do they start cutting rates? At least according to the Fed funds futures, they've priced out rate cuts and priced in rate cuts as soon as June. Rate cuts as soon as June?
Yeah.
Really?
Boy. That's what's priced into the market right now. Is that the Fed, and all the betting is that that sometime this summer the Fed's going to start cutting rates again, and that's not going to solve the inflation problem. So we've got real financial problems in this country.
Well, so then the message is going to be to Mom, Pa, America is it's more important to prop up the stock market than it is to stop your food prices from increasing 10% year over year.
Boy, you are. What are you? You're soak the rich guy? I mean, that's the other irony of this whole episode is that, 1 week Biden's out there saying, we're going to sock it to the rich. We're going to sock them right in the nose. We're going to hit them with the highest taxes ever and blah, blah, blah. They have too much money. And then what are we doing with these bailouts? Who are we bailing out? Not me, not you, not Amy.
All right.
They're bailing out the rich people and the big corporations. It's so absurd. So we have to collect more taxes. The Babylon Bee had a great piece on this. We have to sack the rich so we can get more money out of them so we can give the money back to the rich.
Exactly. All right, Stephen Moore, before we let you go, have you talked to your friend, former President Donald Trump lately, and how is he holding up?
I saw Trump at Mar-a-Lago about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He's tan, rested, and ready. He's running. The latest development on this, I'd like your guys' reaction to this. I see that. Did you see that DeSantis is really taking some swings at Trump now? Did you see that?
Well, yeah, but I mean, how's
pretty modest,
right?
But yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's interesting. He's taking the gloves off a little bit. It was pretty. My advice to DeSantis is don't get in the sewer with the sewer rat. And I think DeSantis is much better off kind of ignoring Trump rather than hitting him back.
Well, a reporter asked him the question. I mean, he said, I don't know about paying hush money off to a former porn star. Because most Americans, we don't know what that's like. We're not part of that process. Yeah. But I mean, this obviously, Rand Paul, tweeted that the New York DA should be put in jail for what he's doing. Obviously, this is overtly political, what's going on here. But when last time you saw Trump, did he know this was coming?
We didn't talk about that, but I will say this, that, this must be the only explanation for this if the arrest happens. What do you place the odds at? What do you think? Is he going to get arrested, Dan?
Yes.
You think so, Amy?
Yes, because I agree with everything Dan
says.
I
doubt it. I mean, look.
You doubt it?
Really? You do doubt it?
Alvin Bragg is. Alvin Bragg's. He's too far gone.
Because if he gets arrested, it is going to be one of the great outrages of all time. Well, let's not forget, folks, no matter what you think about Donald Trump, These are the same people for 2 years who pursued the Russia collusion hoax. These are the same people who tried to impeach him. These are the same people who outrageously raided his Mar-a-Lago home. These are the people over and over and over again. There's been no president in the history of the United States who's been more mistreated and more unfairly treated than Donald Trump. And I don't know anything about the Stormy Daniels stuff. I'm just saying, if they want to guarantee that Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, they will arrest him, because that is going to make him a victim. And he loves to play the part of the victim. So maybe this is a grand plan by the Democrats to ensure that Donald Trump is the Republican nominee.
I think you're getting to it. Steve Moore, economist and author of Govzilla. Steve, thanks as always.
All right, and he joined us. He says thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Hello, friends, and welcome to what has become a spring rite of passage, tax season. As expected, Uncle Sam is out to an early lead, but you, like many others,